overseas adventure travel. A number of you have traveled with them or heard of them. If you know us, we've talked about them because this was our 12th trip. And normally you have 10 to 16 people. There were 6. And that's because of COVID. And it's really hard to get into some of these countries because there's a time limit on when you take the test and how far, you know, how long it's good and where you take it and all that. Coming home is the easy part as long as you pass the quiz and you don't have to stay there for a week. So, yeah, there were 6 of us, a guide, and you'll see some of the other things around there. Everybody we interacted with, OAT had either vaccinated or assured that they were vaccinated, even families of people that we interacted with. So, here's the route that we went on, and I think my cursor's over here, yeah. So we started in Cairo, flew in there, and then spent a couple nights there, then went down to Aswan, and you've heard of that because that's Lake Nasser, the dam, big huge lake down there. And then we did a day trip out to Abu Simbel, and then 5 nights on a yacht, on the Nile River, back to Luxor, and then we flew back and left from Cairo. We traveled by camel, we traveled by tuk-tuk, a horse-drawn cart, a pickup truck, buses, lots of different ways to get around. We interacted with an Aswan homemaker, Nubian historian, Nubian people who have been here for thousands of years, but that's northern Sudan and southern Egypt. They were impacted largely a lot by the dam, and also somebody came and talked to us about that. We visited an island farmer and his family and had lunch with them halfway down the Nile. We visited with a divorced woman. Divorce is a sensitive topic there. It's only been legal, I'll say, for the women to get divorced for a few years. The men could say, you're out of here. I think they had to say it 2 or 3 times. It's one of those kind of things. And then you're gone. So we got lucky flying into Cairo. That's what the pyramids look like from the airplane. Anybody find them? They're actually west of town, and we came south, and I'm looking at the GPS and the screen and so forth, and saying, wow, they must be really delaying us getting into the airport because we're going all around. I bet the pyramids are going to be on our left. Yeah, there they are. Little Photoshop, Tim and how about that? And you can bring out the highlights. Anybody know where the Sphinx is there? It's
oh, I see him.
Is it right there? That's the Sphinx. So these are your first postcard pictures, right? Yeah, and this is Cairo. This is just normal traffic. And they don't observe the lines between the rows at all, between the lanes. They just, like this. We're at the Marriott, which is up there, up here. So we were on the Nile for a couple nights there before we left Cairo. First thing we did is go to the Egyptian Museum, and I've got a whole bunch of these tickets. So they're nice, like placeholders throughout here. This is the older museum. There's a new one under construction. This is his history of Egypt, right? He's got lots of history. Lots of statues inside. Now you're going to see lots of statues at all the tombs and temples and everything, but the kind of thing they could put in the museum was scrolls, papyrus and all. You can't keep those out by the pyramids or something, so you have to have a place for that. There was lots of that. The treasures of Tutankhamun. These 2 people, I don't know who they are, but they weren't going to move, so. No photos allowed in there because people would just spend the whole day in there with their phones. But there were lots of things outside. This is some funerary urns. Part of the process of making the mummies is, that process is they take your internal organs out and they sort them out into. So those are 3 urns of 4 that would be in there. I don't know how they expect to be put back together. This is Tutankhamun's throne. So this is gold and gold leaf. This was out in the hallway, so to speak. And this close-up of the back That's his queen, and I won't say it. You know, you can pronounce it. Who was actually his half-sister. You know, keep it in the family, like all Muslim families do. He became king at somewhere around 9 or 10 years old and died at 19. So he's better remembered in today than he was back then. And the reason is because his tomb was only discovered in the last century, like 100 years. So now we're going to go out and see the pyramids. And, you know, Chevy has that theme, like a rock, right? That song thing that they do. This is built for eternity. They meant it. This is 4,500, you know, the pyramids are, the big one is over 4,000 years old, 4,500 years old. It was the tallest man-made structure in the world until about 500 years ago. You'll have to look up on Wikipedia what that one was. But, so this is built, this is the Great Pyramid. It was built for Pharaoh Khufu, which was Cheops in Greek. So you probably heard one of those. And here's Neil and Beth for scale. And you can start seeing people here. There really weren't very many people around. There are two entrances. This upper one is not available to go in. You can pay and go in this lower one. The guide said there really aren't any decorations on the sides. It's a long, narrow passage, and it's short, and it is like the first day of your trip. So if you go get COVID from somebody as you're going in and out of here, there's your trip. And I went up and looked around, and, you know, kind of looked down the hall there, and a tall guy came out. I said, "How was it?" He said, "It's really short." Good. Up there. This, you got to have this picture, right, with the camels in it.
That's great.
So the pyramid on the right, you can see what they looked like when they were covered back when. And there's the enigmatic Sphinx and a thing in the back. Okay, it's me. I'm for scale, because this is, you can get right up within a couple dozen feet of the Sphinx. But, you know, you want the picture, you can Photoshop me out of this, but you want the picture with the Sphinx and the pyramids in the back. And apparently, I think everybody, well, most people know, there's some kind of light show here at night. You do not go to that. Instead, the next morning we got up real early and flew to Aswan, which is at the high dam, more or less on the Nile River. So this is Lake Nasser and the power plant down below. So there's an Aswan low dam, and of course they didn't call it the Aswan low dam when they built it because it was the only dam. It's like World War I. It wasn't World War I, it was the Great War. Until World War II, and I broke it with the other ones, World War I. So it was first built in 1902, below this. This was built in the 60s, okay, to control, because the low one wasn't doing a good enough job, and they needed the lake, and they needed the hydroelectric power. So it was first built in 1902, then in 1912 was raised, and in 1934 was raised again. That resulted in some flooding that I'll point out in a little bit. This is an earthen or embankment type dam. It's 2.5 miles long and 350 feet high. So the other side there where the power plant is sort of 350 feet lower. 100,000 Nubians, that's the peoples that lived in Lower Egypt and Northern Sudan, were displaced by the high dam. So there's a lot of historical sites and so forth. It's like Australia, you know, everybody lives within 50 miles of the coast. Well, everybody lives within a few dozen miles of the Nile River in Egypt and Sudan. So when they flooded the upper area there, everybody had to move. And that's a big controversy, still a controversy, because there were 7,000-year-old sites that were flooded. Now, we'll come to what happened to some of the other flooded sites that were moved and so forth as we go on. Resettlement goes on today. We went by places that basically they built a wall and said, we're going to make farms here. That's just rocks and sand. You're going to have to bring in a lot of dirt, a lot of water to get anybody to farm that, but that's the plan. So this is looking below the dam. This is what they call the cataracts. If you're a rafting person or something, you know, that's where the rapids are and all the narrow spots, rocky. So this is the lower part, once you block up the water, and then this is actually up the channel where the Nile goes down now. On the way to our hotel, we went to this temple, Philae Temple. This is the goddess Isis. This is a temple that was moved 500 meters in the 70s because the island that it was on was flooding. So the water went right up to the edges of all the temples. And there was a lot of damage occurring from that. So 40,000 pieces, 2 to 25 tons each removed. You'll see the scale of this in a moment. This was an island that only the holy people and so forth, the regular people couldn't go there back then. I mean, back over a long period of time. But you can see some of the carvings on the outside of the temple there. And as we get closer, you say, gee, what happened to those guys? These are desecrated figures. So at some point, this was God Osiris and the goddess Hathor. And when they fell out of favor, they didn't really just remove the whole thing. They just got up sharp things and chopped them up. There is another god represented here. There's a god Horus, which is a falcon, is less desecrated. So apparently he was an alright guy. But then the Christians came along. Now we're here. This is the Coptic Christians. And then the Greeks. So everybody had their shot at graffiti. Then the Romans came. Now, if you've been to Rome and the Forum in that area, Emperor Trajan has a kiosk, has a obelisk or a pole. What am I looking for? Obelisk, yeah, with history and so forth inscribed on it. Wherever you went, they built stuff. This is a kiosk. They call this a kiosk. When I think kiosk, I think like the drive-through coffee places, and where you used to drop off film and things like that. No, that's the size of a kiosk with a couple of people for scale. But this is one of the sites. It was right up. The water was like right at the edge of this, which is great. Now we went to the old Cataract Hotel. There isn't a new Cataract Hotel. But this is 100 years old. It was built in 1899 by Thomas Cook of Cook Travel, that you probably heard of. Lots of famous people have stayed there. We'll come back to this a couple more times because we're going in and out. This is the night. This is a view from our room, looking over at the old Cataract Hotel, and the Nile River is right down, right down there. And this is a Muslim country, so there's no alcohol, kind of really. Well, hotels make allowances like the Marriott in Cairo, and so forth. But there was a very small bar here. Gin and tonic was really expensive, but we sprang for the upscale gin, even because that was like $2 more than the $30 gin and tonic. One of the other travelers where they said, we gotta sit out on the porch at night with the sailboats going by and everything, and have a gin and tonic. So we're in. But we went out to night market the first night. This is your evening marketplace in a lot of parts of the world, kind of thing. An eye-popping bazaar of colors and all, and I have this, and what is this called? I have it written down. Galabea. I think this was a little over the top to wear tonight. Because I have to wear it on top of something else. I did wear this out for dinner one night. And ladies, if you've ever worn a tight skirt, is there a slit in this? No. And I just about went face first because I just tripped on something on the sidewalk of the street. Whoa, because your legs are just... So I sympathize with anyone that's ever worn or tried to wear a tight skirt. So this is morning at the hotel. Now while we're here, I'll point out that, so this is part of the restaurant. We're going to go over there in a minute. This is one suite and its patio, and I'll tell you who was there in a minute. And this is another suite up here on the top floor. Overall, OHE, you eat breakfast. Maybe they have nice hotels, but eat breakfast at the hotel. Maybe it's too nice for them to buy dinner for you. there. This was too nice for them to buy dinner. So we went to other places for dinner. I don't think we ever had dinner at that hotel per se. But guests have included Tsar Nicholas II, Winston Churchill, Howard Carter, who was the one that discovered King Tut's tomb. The American ambassador was there while we were there, but we didn't find out until later. That's the kind of thing they don't tell you until later. And Agatha Christie wrote Death on the Nile while she was staying at this hotel. And there's a famous mystery author there. Having breakfast. The Nile is in the back there. So, and I included this partly because I said we're going to ride camels, but there is a monastery across the river and a couple miles away, St. Simon, and it's said that he prayed for hours on end and that he literally, well, figuratively, tied his beard to the ceiling so that if you nodded off, you woke up. So there's our camels, camel drivers. This is a really large building. It was built in the 7th century and rebuilt in the 10th, and then it was destroyed in 1173 because they were upset that the Christian Nubians were moving in here, and so now it's largely demolished, but it's an interesting site to visit. There are still some paintings visible in some of the little alcoves. And throughout, if you left painted stuff outside, you kind of got deteriorated and destroyed. So we'll see throughout here a few occasions where you see what the colors once were. So, Death on the Nile. This is a locked room mystery in the mystery author's genre, which means that there's a bunch of people on a boat. Nobody gets on or off the boat. Somebody dies. Somebody must have done it. And if you know Agatha Christie, it's sort of like everybody had a reason to do it. Maybe they all did it in some of her stories. But it's been made into a movie now. It was a TV show with David Suchet on a British series. And it's currently Kenneth Branagh. He's got a movie that came out last week or next week or something like that. And then there was a 1978 version that I'll show you a little picture of later. But this is the desk where she wrote the book. I actually downloaded the book while on the Nile, on a boat, and read the book on my iPad. It's like, it's a quick read. 99 cents and you download it. Don't we all do that? You're floating in the middle of the Nile River. Where we're going to be. Then we went to her suite. And this is just one of the rooms that went into the baths and the secretary's area. Notice there's a fireplace in here. There was a fireplace in the bar in the hotel too. It was 100+ degrees. I don't know when, other than wanting a picture of a fireplace. You got to open, I don't know what you do. Everybody wants a fireplace. Now, so that was the top floor. Winston Churchill suite was the next floor down, and that was when I showed the picture of the restaurant. This is his deck. Okay, and Agatha Christie didn't get a big deck like that. But he got this deck, but it was similar suites going on. And I don't remember, I think they told us, we asked the hotel manager, like, so why couldn't we come yesterday instead of today? Because we were going to ask her. Okay, and what was this, 10,000 a night? But because of COVID, it was 8,000, right? Yeah.
You'd be happy already.
Dollars, not Egyptian dollars.
We paid for it.
Yeah.
That's what the Nile looks like when you have that suite going. You have a nice sunset going on in the back, and everything is really pretty. And then there's sailboats that go by. While we were there, we broke our 6 people into 2 groups, 3 and 3, and Beth and I went with different groups just because we met different people. But one of the things that OAT does is you have experiences with local families. So there was no husband in this family either, right? He moved on or something. Yeah. He died. Okay. So this is, the people on the left are fellow travelers, and the people on the right are the folks that Beth had dinner with in their home. And then I'm with the 2 obviously not Egyptian women, were the ones that I went to dinner with. And this woman, her family had, well, they got in the house because when they built the dam, during the construction period, a lot of families got a house basically forever, as long as you kept it in the family kind of thing. And the husband had left, but the wife got the house. So that's okay. So now we're going to go on to Abu Simbel. This is a 140-mile drive from where we were, so 2.5 hours or so on a bus across the desert on a straight road. A lot of people have gone there via the river because as they were building the dam and everything, went, gee, this is going to be underwater by a couple hundred feet. Excuse me, let me go back to a couple minutes here. Yeah. So because of the lake, this was going to be flooded. So they said, let's just cut it up and move it. Well, this, unlike a temple, isn't a stack of blocks to start with. This is a hole in the rock. Okay, so you have to cut the rock and everything into the pieces. So it was 1,036 blocks weighing 11 tons each. Because they moved the mountain, you'll see in a second. They moved the mountain basically. 25,000 workers over 3 years because they said, we got to do this quick because the river's coming. Climate change is slower, but it's going to happen too. So this is, as you walk around to the site, so temple and temple. So both of these are artificial hills. Right? So it's Ramses II and Queen Nefertari is queen. And the queen's one also has the goddess Hathor represented too. So we're going to go in and get closer here. This is how many people are hanging around. This is not thousands of tourists, which is really pretty cool. The guardian statues for them, the face in front fell off of this one, but this was a long time ago it fell off. So when we rebuilt the temple, they didn't say, well, let's fix it. They said, no, we're going to put the pieces back where they've been for a really long time, which is a nicer way to do it, I think. So there's the guardians. Inside there's depictions of battles, and this guy was quite the narcissist because everything's basically statues of Ramses II. So these are all statues of Ramses II in the hallway going in. And again, this is carved out, not built and put in there, which is, I mean, we have our snow sculptures, right? This is some combination of that going on. But when you've got lots of walls and in small scale, I mean, all the temples have carvings everywhere, but you could get right up to examine these. And if I'm not any kind of historian, but if any kind of historian, you just take a couple rooms here and you've got your life's work, basically, deciphering the hieroglyphics. And this, at the back of the temple, like all the way back, is this room that has 4 divinities. Twice a year, October and February 22nd, the sun shines in at sunrise. Except that it doesn't shine on the one on the left because, you know, pronounce it the way it's spelled, Ptah. P-T-A-H. It's a god connected with the realm of the dead, the underworld. So he's never in daylight. It's like, and you dug this hole straight back into the mountain, so that only 2 days a year. And they said that because our sunrise and sunset have shifted over the time since it was built, the dates are a little bit off maybe. But it's supposed to celebrate the birth and the coronation dates of Ramses II. Turns out they were 6 months apart, or whatever it takes for that to work out. That for scale. So he was a big deal, Ramses II. Outside again, same temple. But now we're going to go over to Queen Nefertari's temple. And there's actually 4 Ramses, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 Queen Nefertari. So she didn't even get top bill at her own temple. But it's much different inside. You know, more like royal scenes with her than all his battles and everything of the temple. And the goddess Hathor is also represented there, is the one that gets the daylight, although it's oriented differently, so I'm not promising that there's a specific day that it shines all the way in the street. It's just got a long hallway, so it's always going to light up like that much. So what fancy hotel did we stay at this time? Oh, sorry. From the other side. So this is just looking back at the two temples. And now we'll move over to our beachfront resort. Nile River. My cursor. There's our room. There's the pool. It was great. So Johnny Carson used to say it was hot.
How hot was it?
Some of the pictures you'll see me with a blue poly towel, like a chamois around my neck, because I don't normally go anywhere past 85 or 90. And yes, it is a dry heat, and you can see when sunset it's so maybe 100. But that's what it was. A lot of places we went. Cairo was actually cooler than. But then we went back to Abu Simbel at night, and that was pretty cool because they light everything up and they play music and they have a little kind of over-the-top historical lecture, which was in Spanish because there was a Spanish cruise ship on the river. So, well, we got headphones. So it was interesting. I know enough Spanish to be able to hear both and go, yeah, they're saying the same thing. Margaret, so, whatever. So that was fun. I mentioned earlier when we were talking before this started that it's a very controlled country. It's a police state, basically. There are tourist police. We had tourist police with us in Cairo and Aswan, a fellow wearing a suit when it's 104. Why? And I asked, what are you carrying? Pistol, machine pistol. Okay, back to better. They're police for the tourists. I mean, to make the tourists, make sure they're protected if anybody gets on with something. Because, 10 years ago was there spring, and there were issues, and some of these countries rounding up some tourists and holding permits is a big deal. So we were not with the tourist police on the way back from Abu Simbel the next day, and we've been teasing our guide, she's in the blue there, that, can you do something spontaneous? When OAT goes on trips, they stop for a wedding along the side of the road. They tell us we have to be here at this time. Let's stop here. It's the roadside vendor that deals at a truck stop. And here's a bunch of guys, they're all brothers and cousins. They drive big, heavy machinery trucks around for the construction of the various canals and so forth to move the water around. And they were making tea, and so we went over and they chatted. It was really friendly. Our guide translated, obviously. Group shop. But now they got. This is a dahabeya. The name of it is a site. And this is our home for the next 5 nights. This is Queen of the Nile. We did get beer or wine with dinner here. Okay. Nobody was willing to spend this. Very nice, very nice. There was internet. I could download Death of the Nile. This has no motor. It has a couple masts at the fore and aft. They can sail, but you're not going to make good time because although the current's going north, that's the direction we're going, the wind is coming from the north. So it takes a lot of work to sail on the Nile. And you'll be tacking and everything all the time, whether you're going upstream or downstream. So there's a tender on, because it's kind of smelly, it's 200 feet out on the line, and that pulls you up the river, down the river. But at night, they're not allowed, because they're not a full sailing vessel, they're not allowed to sail at night, so you tie up. Where do you tie up? Over there. A couple of guys get out with sledgehammers and big long spikes and drive them in and tie up. This is what a real cruise ship looks like on the Lower Nile. That's our back to Death of the Nile. Peter Ustinov, Betty Davis, Mia Farrow, George Kennedy, Angela Lansbury playing an over-the-top drunk. Oh, that woman. Yeah, David Niven and Maggie Smith. Yeah, it's great. But they had big screen TV, not this big, and the DVD. So we watched it while we were sailing on the Nile, and nobody died. But while we were at one of our stops, this is the Sudan, the boat that was used in one or more other productions. I'm not sure which, either the David Suchet version that was on the British television, PBS and so forth, mystery series, or the Peter Ustinov one. And this is just kind of working, it's not around like that. This is just we can take the phone and look at it. And the next day we went to the camel fair in the village of Daraa. When you get there, there's a facilitator or the chief arranger fellow. He has his flag, and people come and talk to him about, you know, who should I talk to because I want like a mother and child, calf, camel, or I want a camel for work, or I want a camel for meat. You know, he points out where to go. But he took us around. You know, we watched a couple of these scenes going on with the fellows. Asked our guy, does he think he got a good price? Whether he's a buyer or the seller. He did it. And then the camels go for a truck ride, and you think like, okay, what's a camel doing standing in the back of a Chevrolet? Well, they don't. They get in the back and they lay down. That's 3 camels in the back of a Chevy. We don't know whether they're going to the farm upstate, or whether they're meeting the butcher or the abattoir, or whether they're going to be work camels, you know, pulling a plow or something like that. But we did have camel meat one night offered to us because we went to the butcher shop and got the camel. So we're still on the river. We're stopping at this temple, Komombo. This is like 100 BC. This is Egypt's only double temple. It's Greco-Roman, really, featuring one side dedicated to the crocodile god, crocodile god Sobek, and the other side is the falcon god Paris or Hueris, and I pronounce that one way. I have to read it. So it's 2 identical temples, doubled, you know, just symmetrical along the main axis with twin entrances, twin courts inside, colonnades, pretty much everything. But a unique thing about this temple, or something at this temple, as our guide is pointing out, it's the first depiction of, I think, of medical and surgical instruments. So they're talking about childbirth and other things like that, medical things. And then, you know, this is one of the carvings inside Sobek. It's a close-up of Sobek. Can't mistake that guy for a crocodile god. Not for a crocodile god. And if you're gonna have crocodile gods, you have crocodile mummies. Now they claim there are no crocodiles in this portion of the Nile. They're above the high dam, so down in Sudan and so forth, that there's still some crocodiles. But when you get back to your room, damn crocodiles. Beth didn't know that was going to happen. So another form of transportation, the tuk-tuk. And the tuk-tuk, we went out and met a basket maker. And again, his whole family was vaccinated. Actually, COVID had come to their family and they got over it and so forth. But part of OAT's process was to vaccinate him, make sure he was vaccinated, his children were vaccinated, and all. He makes baskets really quickly. He buys palm, that's not the frond. The frond is kind of leaf bark. You know, buys palm and then has like a little gauge and chops it, and then another gauge and pokes holes in it, and he's pretty quick at it. All I did was assemble. Here's my blue towel to keep cool, and, you know, and a little piece of wood to hammer. And there's Beth with the knife. But the sharp side is the concave side. So she's not looking at the concave side. It splits the palm and cuts it up. this was, one of the experiences of visiting somebody as a local craftsman. It's interesting. Like, what's this guy do? How much did he make? He was making like $1 per basket net, because he had to buy the palm, and it takes a few minutes to make it. So I think he was probably making $5 an hour, $4 an hour, $5 an hour. And his kids had gone to school and everything. So along the river, we stopped at this site that has quarries. This is where the stone came from to build Colombo and Karnak and Luxor, which we're going to visit later. This is what it looks like in real life. The boat there is some archaeologists that are working in the area, and you can see bars across the entrances there now, but in the morning they open them up, and you can go in and see like rooms where maybe, I think some executive's office was in here. This is too nice. But there were side places, there were temples, small temples for the workers there. Gotta keep busy on the day off. This is part of a quarry, and if you were to enlarge this, you can see along here there's like rows of holes. So they would use sticks to drill and then just keep prying basically to get the stone to split. They estimate there were 8 million tons of stone out here. And they're talking about obelisks and stuff. So these obelisks are really tall, right? How many pieces are they? 1. So you got a 150-foot obelisk or something? Yeah. How many do you make before you get one right? Well, there's one in Luxor they think they made 3 times. And basically, it had a fault, They float them down the river on a boat. And you got to build a boat big enough for a 100-foot obelisk to get it down the river and not lose it in the river, because you're not getting it back out of the river. So this was quite a process.